Hello again, football fans, and welcome to the Cincinnati Hogs RFL draft preview. Again, the first round of the RFL draft will take place on Friday night. So we are about 5 days away, 6 days away until round one of the RFL draft. And so I'm going team by team through the previews to see what those teams might do when the draft comes this weekend, whether it's the first round on Friday, second or third round on Saturday, or rounds 4 through 7, which will take place on Sunday. So the Cincinnati Hogs team preview, let's go ahead and take a look at their current roster and what they might do come next weekend. So let's pull it up real quick right here. So take a look at the Hogs roster, which I guess I would say this, and I know I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends in the Hogs locker room for this opinion, but I think that they overachieved when you look at the team last year and you look at what their expectations were versus what they accomplished. You know, obviously getting to the playoffs, winning playoff games. I don't think that's something that we had on our bingo card this time last year. And so I would say that the Hogs overachieved. And I'm not just saying that because it's, kind of my own opinion and how I feel. I'm also basing that on the roster and what I see in terms of the roster construction and just the overall talent on the roster. So let's take a quick peek here at what I mean by that. And if we go ahead real quick and I'll click on the depth chart here so we can kind of get an idea of what the Hogs roster looks like. I'm going to scroll through here: quarterbacks, running backs, fullbacks and tight ends, wide receivers, offensive line. Okay. I'm going through all this. And when I get to the bottom, you're going to notice one thing that is missing from all of these names and all of these position groups. And that one thing that's missing is they don't have a single player on their roster that is a 90 overall or above. And while they have some really great players that are young and mid 80s or low 80s on the way up, they don't have anybody. They don't have a single player on their roster that is a 90 overall or greater. And in the RFL, the way that this league is structured and the way that this league is set to move forward into the future, you have got to have dudes. And when I say dudes, Dion Bowe, who's an 85 overall at 23 years old, he's going to be a dude. But he's not there yet. In 2 years, Dion Bowe, great. Lock it up. Dude. He'll have dude status. Charles Turner, possibly even, if they re-sign him. We'll get into that a little bit because Charles Turner is a name that is a potential free agent at the end of the year. Personally, I don't envision a scenario where they don't re-sign Charles Turner, but I will play out a couple scenarios where you might have pause and you might think twice about potentially bringing back somebody like a Charles Turner. And then you've got some other guys. You've got, let's see, Connor Hawk, 23 years old, 86 overall on the offensive line. Probably a dude already, right? Because in terms of offensive line, if he's not like a dude now, he's a dude next year. But again, they don't have anyone on their team that's a 90 overall. And I understand it's not about overalls. It's not about, it's not just about attributes. It's about scheme. It's about playbooks. It's about how guys play in certain systems. I understand all that. But in a league that is dominated by superstar talent, it's really nice if you have somebody, especially at a skill position, a playmaker, whether that's a corner, like a shutdown corner, or whether that is you're never going to catch anything over the middle linebacker, if that is a wide receiver that's going to blow the top off the joint, if that's a running back that'll just run you over, or if it's a quarterback that's going to throw for 300 yards and just dot you up all night long. It's nice to have those, and the Hogs don't have those right now. In 3 years, if the Hogs make the right moves, and when I say make the right moves, they've already made some really great moves. When I say make the right moves, what I'm really referring to is re-signing the right guys. If they do that 2 or 3 years from now, they'll have 3 or 4 guys that are 90 overall or higher. But right now they don't. So I look at the success they had last year. You look at Ronnie Shanahan, right? Like, let's go up to Ronnie Shanahan and pull him up. Ronnie Shanahan took the starting job from Jake McBride, never looked back. Ronnie Shanahan is the starting quarterback. He certainly isn't, unless something happens, Ronnie Shanahan gets hurt, he is the starting quarterback. He's not the highest overall quarterback on the roster, but he's the starter. And that just goes back to the point of, I get it. It's not all about attributes and overalls. But for Ronnie Shanahan, who's going into his second year in the league, it would be really nice to have some of those 90 overall guys. Last year, you had Dre Shivers. Dre Shivers is honestly what kind of made this team tick, right? Like, he was the guy on offense. We talked about throughout the year, Ronnie Shanahan wasn't the one leading the team to the playoffs. It was the defense and it was the running game. Ronnie Shanahan, again, he was a rookie. He didn't have the weight of the world on his shoulders. Ronnie Shanahan was the game manager. That's kind of all they needed him to be. If he struggled, they had a serviceable quarterback on the bench that they could go to. So they weren't asking all of that of Ronnie Shanahan. Now, moving into year 2, without Dre Shivers, there's a scenario where there is more expected of Ronnie Shanahan. And so not having those guys, not having 90 overall receivers, running backs, things like that, those things could come back to hurt this team. Not saying they will, but it's a possibility for this team to regress a little bit. I don't think this team makes a run at the ARC championship. I just don't. I think last year was an overachievement. And so when I look at the roster and I look at where they might go, they don't have a ton of draft picks, right? So when you take a look at the draft picks that the Hogs have, they have the 29th pick. These are their own picks. They didn't make any trades. They have a first, a second. They don't have a third round pick. And then they have a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So they have 6 total picks in the draft. And the reality is the first round pick and the second round pick are probably guys that they're going to want to step in right away. But more than anything, and this is where I don't, if I'm the Cincinnati Hogs, I don't care as much about finding a guy with the 29th pick in the first round that can start immediately. What I'm looking for is a guy that can become an absolute dude. I'm looking for a guy, even if I have to develop him, and he's not, maybe he's, if it's a receiver, maybe he's 3rd on the depth chart or 4th on the depth chart as a rookie. But I know that he can become the guy. That's what I'm looking for at the 29th pick in the first round. Like, we can very easily go through and we've got the depth chart right here. So we'll go through it together. Quarterback, they're set. Running back, I'm going to say they're set. I know I talked about Dre Shivers and what he meant to the team last year, but if you remember when Dre Shivers got hurt towards the end of the year, Jacob Haynes came in and Jacob Haynes came in and was a monster for them. When you're 6'3", 220 pounds, and you have 96 speed, forget about it. Forget about it. I think I speak for every single coach in the league when I say I would love to have a running back that was 6'3", 220 pounds with 96 speed. And this guy was on the bench. The only reason he saw the field last year was because Dre Shivers got hurt. So they're set at running back. You go to tight ends. They've got two young. I'm sorry, no, that's Peyton Cash, 78 overall, 23 years old, and then Zachary Henry. Again, could they go tight end in the draft? Possibly, but I don't think that's something that they're going to want to do. They only have 6 picks. So are they going to go tight end in the first round? I doubt it. I don't think that really makes a lot of sense. Are they going to go tight end in the second round? Again, I don't think that makes a lot of sense either. Back to my point, I think they want to find someone that is going to become an absolute superstar. And when I say superstar, I don't just mean high overall. I mean a playmaker. I mean a skill position player. I'm looking at the wide receivers, and I'm looking at Rashawn Hale. He's 23 years old. Great. He's young. He's an 81 overall. It's going to be at least 2 more years until he really gets to become that upper echelon, or if we're ever going to be talking about Rashawn Hale as, a top 10 wide receiver in the league. It's going to be a couple years before that conversation can even merit any weight. Right. And then you got Caleb Godfrey, 78 overall. He's 26 years old. There's not a lot more that we're going to get out of Caleb Godfrey. At this point, he kind of is what he is. You could say the same thing about Tavion Blue. Yeah, he's 25. He's a year younger. He's also got the star dev. So, you can make the argument Tavion Blue is probably in line to be that wide receiver 2 over Caleb Godfrey. And then you got Dijon Nails, again, 23 years old. Dom Bass, 23 years old. You got guys on this team that are young, but I just don't see any of those guys and think to myself, they're going to turn into one of the best receivers in the league. They're going to turn into a top 10 receiver in the league, even top 15. I don't look at any one of those guys in the next 5 years and think to myself, that guy is going to be a top 10 or 15 receiver in the RFL. And I think that's what this team needs. So you can go down and you look at the offensive line. Could they use some help at the offensive line? Sure. Right? Fernando Rudolph, he's 31 years old. You look at CT London, he's 30 years old. You got Casey McCoy, he's 22. Connor Hawk, 23. But again, Connor Hawk, another one of those names, just like Charles Turner, who is a potential free agent at the end of the year. Now, again, I said this about Charles Turner. I don't envision a scenario where the Hogs are going to let Charles Turner go. I don't envision a scenario where the Hogs are going to let Connor Hawk go. But how much money are those guys going to cost? And if those guys are going to cost a ton of money, well, then what does that do for them in the offseason? Does that hamstring them in the offseason? Are they going to have the resources and the funds available to them to go out and get a guy that they might need on their roster that they don't currently have? Because picking 29th in the first round, you're not really guaranteed to get one of those, upper echelon elite talent guys. You might get lucky. You might find a diamond in the rough. But the third to last pick in the first round is not where you'd like to be if you're trying to find one of those bona fide franchise type skill position players moving forward. Then if you look at the defensive line is where I think they could, again, they don't have a third round pick. So really looking at the first 2 picks in the draft as the ones, and the defensive line at defensive tackle is where I could see a scenario with that 29th pick in the first round, because I look at this team and I look at, okay, Carson Stevenson, again, another name that is a free agent at the end of the year if they don't re-sign him. Let's make a case to re-sign him. He's got superstar dev. He's an 84 overall. He's 6'4", 338 pounds. So he's a bona fide nose tackle. Like, he is a space eater in the middle, right? So that's your argument for re-signing him. That's the case to re-sign him. I want that guy. I want a 300 basically 40-pound guy. If I'm running a 3-4 defense, which I don't know what they're going to be running next year, but if I'm running a 3-4 defense and I've got a 340-pound defensive tackle, great. Take up all that space in the middle that is vacated by the fact that I've only got 3 guys on the line instead of 4. But are they going to re-sign him? Because Charles Turner is a bigger priority. Connor Hawk is a bigger priority. And then are they going to sign Carson Stevenson after the fact? So I legitimately feel like 29th pick in the first round, we could be looking at defensive tackle for the Hogs. And so that's where I'll stop kind of here. Like, we can go and look through the rest of the roster. The linebacking core is phenomenal. And whatever they don't have a ton of confidence in right now, the future is very bright. You look at a guy like Salua Scott, you might remember him from a few years back in the college series. Salua Scott was a phenomenal player in college, and he is buried on the depth chart here in Cincinnati. He's a 75 overall. He's 23 years old. Isaac Evans, same thing. 75 overall, 23 years old. Danny Reese, 76 overall, 24 years old. These are all guys that are basically buried on the depth chart, but they could be the future, right? So when Cason Fine, who's 32, is gone, in steps Danny Reese, Isaac Evans, Salua Scott. When Keon Dever, who is already regressing, when he is gone, those guys will step in. So I'm not worried about the linebackers. If they even take a linebacker in this draft, which, quite honestly, if you only have 6 picks, I don't know why the Hogs would even use a draft pick on a linebacker. And if they did, it would have to be one of the late ones. I mean, if you take one in round 6, round 7, okay, fine, whatever. I just think that there's other areas that they could go that are more meaningful and impactful for this roster. And then you look at the secondary. Anthony Washington, another name, potential free agent at the end of the year, right? So they've got dudes that are free agents at the end of the year. I'm sorry. I said they didn't have anyone on the roster that was over a 90. Anthony Washington is a 91. But they've got to worry about re-signing some of these guys. And so I said this earlier, 3 years from now, could the Hogs be one of the best teams in the ARC? Yes. But they've got to manipulate the roster and pull the right strings. A guy like Connor Hawk, I think you got to bring him back. A guy like Anthony Washington, I know he's 28 years old, but I kind of think you got to bring him back. Sign him to a 3-year deal. Let him play out his career. Let him play out his contract, or the rest of his career at least. And, if he retires at 32 years old, okay, you still got at that point a mid to high 80s, even if regression hits, and you got a guy like Anthony Washington. But you look at a guy like Charles Turner, and while, again, I said this, I don't envision a scenario where they let him walk. If you let Charles Turner go, or maybe you dangle Charles Turner as a potential trade candidate, you have guys that are young that can step up, right? Like Danny Reese, Isaac Evans, Salua Scott, those guys can step up. You've got Deon Bowe right now. If you're going to put Deon Bowe and Charles Turner, if you're going to play both of them as a middle linebacker, well, then, I get it if you're running a 3-4, but you have the opportunity to potentially move Charles Turner and get really good talent somewhere else, and then just let Danny Reese start. Let Isaac Evans start. Move those guys to middle linebacker. So let's go ahead and take a look at the defensive tackle market and the wide receivers. Because again, I mentioned wide receiver being like a go get that dude, go get that guy, right? So when we take a look, and again, we're all of these team previews are all going to be kind of based on the rosters and the rankings that we saw, the Pecan rankings, which for those of you that have not seen, Pecan put out his rankings, all the draft eligible prospects and his rankings. So when you look at the defensive tackle position, let's start here, because I think for me, this is the more immediate need for the Hogs. And so at pick 29, you're not going to get Wyatt Harris. At pick 29, you could get Jamari Logan. I could envision a scenario where Jamari Logan is there, Ishmael Ibarra, Joshua Farmer, Mark Grimes, whichever one of those defensive tackles you like. If you like him that much, I think they're in play at 129. You go to 229, I think you could possibly do the same thing. You know, the lower end of those guys. Maybe you're not, if you're looking at these rankings and you're taking them at face value here, if Jamari Logan is not available at 229, well, maybe Ishmael Ibarra is, maybe Joshua Farmer is, maybe a Mark Grimes is available at 229. So maybe you don't want to go that route at 129, but you can probably get one of those other guys. Maybe it's not the number 1 on your list, but maybe it's the 2 or 3 or 4 on your list. You can probably get that guy with the 29th pick in the second round. And so that leaves the first round pick wide open again. And this is where I go back to the whole thing about trying to find a guy that you feel is going to be an absolute monster, or at least has the potential. You can rally the troops. You can like sell the guys in the locker room. Oh, I went too far here. So I'm going to go to wide receiver. And obviously Dior Gore is not going to be in play at 129, but maybe Steve McCaskill is. And if Steve McCaskill is available at 129, I think it's a very difficult situation, or a very difficult conversation, if you don't take him. I think Steve McCaskill has the opportunity to 3 or 4 years from now be one of those RFL leaders at the position. And I don't know if I feel that way about anyone that's on the roster right now. Rashawn Hale has the best chance of that, but I could make an argument that 2 years from now, Steve McCaskill might be better than Rashawn Hale. Certainly 3 years from now. When you look at the activity, when you look at the fact that he's a user, he's shown that he's committed to the league. He's coming from a perennial powerhouse. I mean, we're talking about the Ohio State University, right? Like, I think Steve McCaskill could be that guy. And I don't know if he's available at 129. He might not be. But if Steve McCaskill is available at 129 and I am running the Cincinnati Hogs, I'm taking Steve McCaskill. I think Steve McCaskill is the number 2 receiver in this class. I think there's like three legitimate tiers of receiver here. I think Dior Gore is tier 1. Steve McCaskill is tier 2. And then I think everything from Trayvon Simpson probably all the way down to maybe even like Jamie LaRue and Rohan Boxey, like they're all kind of in that tertiary tier for me, right? Like I don't want to be the team that is taking Trayvon Simpson or Mamadou Sanyalu in round 2 when someone like Talon Ross, Khalid Lyman, Corey Pauly, Jamie LaRue, Rohan Boxey are all going in round 3, right? Like I think I would rather use my round 2 pick and wait and get somebody like a LaRue, a Boxey in round 3 than use my early round 2 pick on someone like Trevon Simpson. I don't think the gap between Simpson and someone like Boxy is greater than other positions that you could address when you're talking about beginning of the second round versus end of the third round. Like, you're talking about a 50 or 60 position gap. And I think there's a lot of other positions that you could address. So for me, I'm looking at the Cincinnati Hogs. I think defensive tackle, I think wide receiver. And then when you get into the later rounds, I think they could go somewhere on the offensive line. At that point, it doesn't really matter. You want to use your 4th round pick on an offensive lineman? Great. Get some depth. You want to use your 5th round pick on a corner, right? Because again, Anthony Washington is, getting close to 30 years old. All right, fine. I could certainly see that scenario as well. We go back real quick. You look at Chris Dixon. He's 26 at this point. He probably is what he is. Same thing with Freddie McAllister, 26, kind of is what he is. Matthew Hall, he's already 31. Certainly going to be regressing. So, that 4th round pick, if I'm the Hogs, if I did go defensive tackle, wide receiver with 1-2, well, then with my 4th round pick, I'm looking at the secondary. Or if I want to get frisky and I want to go secondary in round 1, great. You can look at the safety position. And then you can look at defensive tackle in round 2 and maybe wide receiver in round 4. Right. But I think if you're the Cincinnati Hogs, you're looking at wide receiver, you're looking at defensive tackle, you're looking at secondary, and you're trying to get your guys. Realistically, who are your guys that are going to be available to you? Because 129 is not the best position to be in. Fortunately for the Hogs, they have a good roster, but they're going to have to, like I said, they're going to have to pull the right strings, re-sign the right guys. Because when we go back to the home screen, you'll see what I was talking about. Anthony Washington, free agent at the end of the year. Connor Hawk, Carson Stevenson, Charles Turner. All these guys are free agents at the end of the year. And Connor Hawk, for my money, is priority number 1. Charles Turner, normally I would say, is priority number 2. However, given the depth that they have at the position, I don't know if that's actually the case. I might say that Anthony Washington is priority number 2. But the reality is Charles Turner is probably priority number 2. And so if that's the case, then Anthony Washington might become expendable. And if Anthony Washington does in fact become expendable, well, then you got to figure that they're going to go secondary with one of those 1st or 2nd round picks. All right, so that is the Cincinnati Hogs team preview. Again, the RFL draft kicks off on Friday night. Round 1 is on Friday. Round 2 is on round 2 and 3 are on Saturday, and then rounds 4 through 7 will be Sunday. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on your notifications so that you can be notified. We're now 3 teams into the draft preview: the Chicago Cougars, the Toronto Huskies, and Cincinnati Hogs are in the books. You can get on the YouTube channel, Miners Live. There is a playlist there. You can see all of the RFL draft team previews in that playlist. Go check them out. They'll all be uploaded as they are completed. Until next time, we have the Pittsburgh Pioneers left in the ARC North. Until then, take care, everybody.